Well, as we mentioned, Federal Greens leader Senator Christine Milne says her party has a bright future and is bigger than its outgoing leader Bob Brown. Senator Milne took over from Senator Brown yesterday. Well, for more, let's cross to our political reporter in Canberra, Latika Bourke, who is joined by the new Deputy Leader of the Greens, Adam Bandt.
Adam Bandt, welcome to Weekend Breakfast. Is Bob Brown irreplaceable?
No, he's unique, and I think history will show that he's been one of the most significant individuals on the Australian political landscape. It's not everyone who starts out as an activist and gets themselves into a state parliament and then builds up a federal parliament that's got representation and balance of power in both houses, with 1.7 million people voting for him. I think it's a remarkable achievement, and I think he's going to continue to do some amazing things outside of politics. But he's not, no one is irreplaceable, and I think in Christine we've got an amazing leader who's going to, I think, take this party to new heights.
Did you get an inkling at all that he may be considering hanging up the boots? He had started to look a little bit more tired this past year.
Look, I didn't have any inkling that anything was going to happen yesterday. I turned up for our regular party room meeting with 20 items on the agenda, having assiduously read all the agenda papers and worked out some notes, and then we had the bombshell at the start of the meeting, and we put our papers aside and focused on everything else. So I didn't know it was coming. Obviously, Bob had told Christine Milne about it a week before, but it was news to the rest of us.
Now, for the position of deputy, you beat the more experienced Senators Scott Ludlam and Sarah Hanson-Young. Is that because your lower house seat of Melbourne is in need of sandbagging and is more at risk than their Senate spots?
Well, look, all of us are, myself and Scott and Sarah are all up for a re-election at the next election. I think it sends a pretty strong message that the party room is serious about us having ongoing representation in both houses of Parliament. We're here now as a stable, ongoing third political force in this country in both houses of Parliament, and it's also, I think, a vote of confidence in my ability and our ability to win the seat at next time, which of course a poll taken last year shows that we're on track to do, even if Labor and Liberal collaborate on preferences.
So you being the sole lower house representative for the Greens, that definitely was a factor in your win as deputy?
Well, it's certainly something that I put to the party room as something that I could bring to the job as deputy leader. And look, it's the first time now that we have a leadership team represented in both houses of Parliament, and I think that's significant because the House of Representatives is obviously where government is formed. The leader and deputy leader of the old parties is in the House of Representatives, and I think it's a logical progression for us as a growing party to now cement that leadership representation in both houses.
And on forming government, that's something that the Greens are very blatant about wanting to do outright. Do you think then that the Greens will need to moderate some of their policies, particularly economic ones, given that elections in Australia are generally won in the centre?
I think that we will go to this election making the very strong case that we are in fact the only economically responsible party. And I think that you're seeing that increasingly in some of the commentary in the newspapers and from the economists. We are the only ones who will have a platform that will explain how we will raise the income that we need to fund the services, the health services, the education, the high-speed rail that we are all entitled to and that we, as a wealthy country, should be providing to all of our citizens. And we're not recklessly pursuing a surplus this year. We think it could wait a year or wait 2 years because we think that pursuing a surplus at the moment just is a political imperative and is potentially going to hurt those sectors of the economy that are doing it tough at the moment. So I think our challenge, if you like, is to and I think one of the things that I will be making a priority in my role as Deputy Leader is explaining our economic credentials and our economic narrative to voters, because up until now, perhaps many of them haven't heard that from us.
So you think voters will keep coming your way across the political spectrum? You don't see any need to come further right on some of those economic principles, perhaps?
Look, I think our job is to perhaps better explain to people where we stand, because my experience is that when you explain to people that we're the ones who, as I've said, have a plan for taking a fair share of the wealth of this mining boom that might be over within a decade or two, and making sure that that safeguards us for future generations and funds the dental health and the schools that we need. Most people agree with that, and our job is often to try and cut through some of the criticism that comes from our opponents and that sometimes comes from elsewhere that suggests that we haven't thought about these issues. We have, and now we're in a good position to explain them to people.
And how long do you think it will take for the Greens to form government outright?
Oh, well, look, it's not going to happen at the next election. It's obviously a longer-term project. But look, as said before, Bob Brown started with one member in the federal parliament, and now we've got 10. We've got 1.7 million people voting for us across the country. I think it is only... and you look at what's happening in Tasmania, where you have Greens and Labor working together in government, and you have two Greens ministers, and I think that what we're seeing in states like that, we're probably only a couple of elections away from in Australia.
Now, Adam, the Greens and some sections of the media have had a pretty testy relationship at times, and your new leader spoke about needing or wanting to repair relationships with the bush and also business. Any plans to break bread with the sections of the hate media the Greens have despised?
Well, look, we'll keep on doing what we do, and I guess it's up to those sections of the media as to whether it's still their stated aim to destroy the Greens, a stated aim that I don't think that they would talk about other political parties, or whether they now want to take this opportunity to look at us a bit more seriously. I mean, look, it's easy to stand up and carp and play to prejudices about a particular political party, but we are now in balance of power in both houses of Parliament. We're enjoying the scrutiny that this brings on us, because it shines a spotlight on our economic policies and on our environmental policies. And so I would just hope that perhaps a bit of greater attention is paid to what we actually stand for rather than what people think we stand for.
Back to the budget surplus, the government, upon your and Christine Milne's elections to the leadership positions, have asked you to act responsibly when the May budget's handed down. So what will come first, passing spending cuts for the government and supporting them in minority government, or will you stick to your principles and oppose spending cuts that would return that budget to surplus?
Look, I think it's economically irresponsible to be pressing for a surplus this year. I think it can wait a year or wait a year or two, and that's what the economists say. In the state of Victoria, we're losing tens of thousands of jobs a month, and it's only going to hurt those states that are suffering in the as a result of the mining bubble to cut public spending further. So we've made it very clear in our agreement with the government that we will support supply, keep the lights on, keep public servants paid, and we're committed to that. The last budget, we also made it clear that we didn't consider that meant that we had to support any additional spending cuts that might come in the form of other legislation, and that's what's happened since then. We're in the negotiations with the government at the moment about the budget. We think that their prescription is not the right prescription for Australia at the moment, but we maintain what I signed up to and what Christine Milne signed up to, which is that we'll continue to ensure supply.
Adam Bent, thank you for joining us on Weekend Breakfast.
Thanks, Latika.